The HOA president literally tried to steal my lake 3 days after I moved in. Turns out she didn't know I own the docks her entire neighborhood depends on. Picture this. I'm standing in my late uncle's cabin, still smelling like funeral flowers. An old pine, when this pearl white Escalade comes crunching up my gravel driveway. Out steps this woman in a tennis outfit at 9 a.m. on a Tuesday, clutching a folder like it's the Holy Grail. I'm Belinda Crankshaw, HOA president, she announces, shoving papers into my hands. This lake is community property. You need to sign. Over marina operations immediately. The papers felt crisp and official, but something about her desperate eyes told me she was bluffing. What I didn't know yet was that she was sitting on a financial time bomb, and I was the only one who could defuse it or blow up her entire scheme. What would you do if someone tried to steal your inheritance right after a funeral? Drop a comment about your worst HOA nightmare and tell them where you're watching from. Let me back up and tell you how I ended up in this war. 6 months ago, I was Marcus Trenton, 45, divorced electrician from Detroit, living in a studio apartment that smelled like instant ramen and regret. My ex-wife got the house, I got the legal bills, and my future looked about as bright as a blown fuse. Then, great Uncle Silas died and changed everything. Uncle Silas was the family hermit, 40 years alone on this incredible lake property in Michigan, barely spoke to anyone, kept detailed journals about everything. The funeral was tiny. Just me and a few weathered neighbors who whispered stories about him keeping the vultures away. The lawyer's office rire of old coffee and desperation when he slid the inheritance papers across his desk. 2 acres of prime waterfront, Mr. Trenton. The cabin needs work, but you own 400 feet of Lake Winnebago's shoreline, including all underwater rights, and that 8-slip marina your uncle operated. I had no clue what underwater rights meant, but those bold slips were renting for $200 each per month. Do the math. That's $1,600 monthly income I just inherited. The property was stunning, pine trees towering over a 1960s cabin with good bones, crystal clear water lapping against professionally built docks. The smell of fresh lake air mixed with sawdust from Uncle Silas's workshop still lingered everywhere. This place could be my fresh start. Then Belinda Crankshaw introduced herself. 3 days after the funeral, 3 days. I'm measuring for new windows when gravel explodes under the tires of a pearl white Escalade. Out steps this woman radiating entitlement like heat off asphalt. Tennis outfit at 10 a.m. designer sunglasses. Fake smile that could cut glass. Belinda Crankshaw, HOA president, she announces, marching toward my door with 10 nervous board members trailing behind. We need to discuss your situation. The way she said situation made my teeth clench. She shoves this official folder at me. Inside, legal papers claiming lake access as grandfathered community easement and demanding I sign marina operations over to the HOA for $1 annually. This is how Lakeshore Estates operates. She explains like I'm mentally deficient. We maintain standards, protect property values. We simply cannot allow inappropriate commercial operations disrupting our family community. Her voice dripped with coded language that made my skin crawl. The message was clear. People like you don't belong here. 48 hours. She continues, adjusting her sunglasses like a weapon. Sign willingly, or we'll destroy you in court. Ask the Hendersons how that worked out. Oh wait, you can't. They sold and moved away after we made their lives hell. The threat hung in the air thick as humidity. That night, surrounded by Uncle Silas's musty papers and the sound of water gently slapping the dock, I dove into his journals. What I found made my blood boil, page after page documenting Belinda's systematic harassment campaigns. The Kowalski family forced out after 18 months off frivolous lawsuits. The young Martinez couple driven away by constant violation letters and intimidation. But one journal entry stopped me cold. Belinda thinks she's smart, but she doesn't know about the 1999 county easement agreement. $12,000 annual fee required for lake access rights. Haven't seen a payment in years. Whoever inherits this place, that's your nuclear option. Nuclear option. My hands shook as I searched for more details. Another entry. The marina sits on my underwater property. Every boat slip, every dock post, every chain and cleat, mine by deed. Let the vultures come. The next owner will have all the ammunition they need. I sat back in Uncle Silas's creaky chair, tasting the bitter coffee I'd been nursing for hours. This wasn't just about property rights. This was about a systematic bully who'd been terrorizing lakefront owners for years, stealing their homes through legal warfare and intimidation. She'd picked the wrong target this time. The musty basement held more secrets, and something told me Uncle Silas had left me everything I needed to turn the tables on Queen Belinda and her little kingdom. Time to go hunting. Belinda didn't waste time declaring war. She brought the entire county with her. The morning after her ultimatum expired, I'm making coffee when 3 vehicles roll up my driveway like an invasion force. County inspection truck, sheriff's deputy, and Belinda's pearl white Escalade bringing up the rear. The smell of diesel exhaust mixed with my fresh ground coffee as I watch the circus unfold. Mr. Trenton, Dave Morrison, county inspector. Multiple complaints about illegal commercial operations, environmental violations, and unpermitted structures. Behind him, Belinda stood wearing that tennis outfit like armor, practically bouncing with excitement. The deputy looked bored, but he was there to make sure I cooperated fully with the investigation. I'm sure this is just paperwork confusion, Belinda called out sweetly. Once Mr. Trenton understands community standards, I'm confident he'll make appropriate arrangements. But here's the thing about working construction for 20 years. You recognize intimidation tactics, and you learn to document everything. Ma'am, I need to conduct this inspection without interference, Dave told Belinda firmly. County policy. Her smile froze like ice on a windshield. Of course, I'll wait in my vehicle. The moment she was out of earshot, Dave's demeanor completely changed. Your Uncle Silas was good people, he whispered. This lady's been filing complaints against you for 3 weeks before you even moved. And that tell you something. 3 weeks. I'd inherited the property for weeks ago. Dave examined everything with professional thoroughness while I pulled out my phone and started recording every dock post, every electrical connection, every permit Uncle Silas had meticulously maintained. 0 violations. The sound of his clipboard pages flipping mixed with Belinda's engine idling impatiently. Listen, Dave said quietly as we walked the shoreline. I've seen this exact pattern twice before. Constant harassment, frivolous complaints. Then suddenly the property gets sold dirt cheap. Both times, guess who bought it through shell companies? The pieces clicked together like a perfectly wired circuit. That evening, I didn't just read Uncle Silas's files. I photographed every single page. The basement filing cabinet smelled like mothballs and righteous anger. But what I found was a masterclass in documentation. The 1950 original deed was unambiguous. All riparian rights extending to Lake Centerline, including Lake Bottom and all structures built thereon. Uncle Silas had underlined this section in red ink with a note scrolled in the margin. Most people don't know waterfront property typically includes the lake bottom to the center line unless specifically excluded. That's why lakefront costs so much more than regular land. Smart man, every boat slip, every dock, every chain mined by law. But Uncle Silas's real genius was in the details. He documented every interaction with the HOA for 40 years. Letters demanding payment for marina use, refusals, legal threats, and his responses, always polite, always referencing the deed, always keeping copies. The next morning brought my counterpunch. I called Dave Morrison directly. Dave, I need to file some complaints of my own. Trespassing, illegal use of private property, and operating commercial ventures without landowner permission. What commercial ventures? The HOA has been charging $200 per month for marina slips on my lake bottom for 15 years. Never paid me a dime in rent. That's $140 for dollars. 0 in unpaid lease fees plus trespassing damages. Silence. Then Jesus Christ. You got documentation. 40 years worth. That afternoon, the real allies emerged. Tom and Betty Henderson knocked on my door, carrying cookies that smelled like victory and looking nervous as cats. We heard what Belinda's doing, Betty said, glancing around like spies. Same playbook she used on us, but we brought you some methane. Tom handed me a thick folder. Every violation notice, every legal threat, every dirty trick she pulled on us. Kept copies of everything before we sold. The cookies tasted like chocolate chip justice. As I flipped through 17 separate violation notices in 6 months. Grass too long, measured with a ruler. Mailbox non-compliant color. Trash cans visible from street for 37 minutes past pickup time. The paper felt worn from handling. Like Tom had reviewed these injustices countless times. Cost us $31,000 in legal fees. Tom said bitterly. Her husband Dale suddenly found problems with our mortgage right after we started fighting back. Amazing coincidence. But Betty's next words changed everything. 3 other families on the lake got the same treatment. The Kowalskis, the young Martinez couple, and the Patels all sold for 60–70% of market value. All to the same shell company. That night, sitting on my dock listening to water lap against posts that were legally mine, I made a decision. This wasn't just about my property anymore. This was about stopping a systematic predator who'd been terrorizing families for years. I opened my laptop and started typing. Not a surrender. A declaration of war. The next morning, Belinda would Find certified letters in her mailbox, formal trespass notices for every boat using her marina, demanding $50,000 in back rent and requiring removal of all vessels within 30 days. Game on. Queen Belinda. Belinda's response to my trespass notices was swift, vicious, and completely predictable. Within 48 hours, she called an emergency HOA meeting at the community center. The flyers went out to all 47 households, with red lettering screaming urgent community health hazard. According to her notice, my marina posed immediate environmental and safety risks to our families and property values. I wasn't invited, obviously, but Tom Henderson was, and he called me afterward with the full report. She's lost her damn mind, he whispered into the phone. Claimed your dock improvements are leaching chemicals into the lake. Said you're planning to turn the place into some kind of commercial fishing operation that'll bring undesirable elements to the neighborhood. The coded language made my skin crawl, but I wasn't surprised. People like Belinda always reveal their true colors when cornered. Gets better, Tom continued. She's hired some hotshot lawyer from Grand Rapids. Guy charges for $100 an hour there. Filing an injunction to stop all your construction work, claiming it violates lake environmental protections, for $100 an hour. The HOA was burning through member dues like kindling all to steal my property. But Belinda's real masterstroke came the next morning. I'm replacing rotted dock planks when I hear car doors slamming. 3 of my marina slip renters, the Johnsons, the Kowalskis, and an older gentleman named Frank walking out my driveway looking like they'd rather be anywhere else. Marcus, Frank starts, his voice strained. We got letters from the HOA yesterday. If we don't terminate our slip leases with you by Friday, we'll face $500 daily fines for supporting non-compliant commercial operations. The smell of fresh wood stain on my hands mixed with the scent of fear radiating from these decent people. Belinda was weaponizing their neighbors against them. She can't legally do that, I said. But Frank shook his head. Maybe not. But she can make our lives hell-trying. The Johnsons already got a violation notice for their garden gnome being aesthetically inconsistent. My mailbox is suddenly non-regulation. Hide after 15 years. This was exactly how driven out the Hendersons. Death by 1,000 paper cuts. That afternoon, I called the maritime attorney Tom had recommended, Patricia Wong, who specialized in lakefront property disputes. Her voice was crisp, professional, and expensive. Mr. Trenton, I've reviewed the documents you mailed. You're riparian. Rights are ironclad. But there's something else you need to know about your situation. My stomach dropped. What? I've seen this HOA president's tactics before. Belinda Crankshaw has acquired for lakefront properties in the past 8 years using identical harassment campaigns. She creates legal pressure, forces expensive court battles, then offers settlement buyouts at 60% market value. The pattern was becoming crystal clear. But here is the interesting part, Patricia continued. I cross-referenced property records with her husband, Dale's Bank. Lakeshore Bank holds mortgages on 23 of the 47 HOA properties. That's a massive conflict of interest if he's influencing HOA decisions that affect his own loan portfolio. Bingo. The fix wasn't from the start. There's more, she said. And I could hear papers rustling. Your uncle's marina lease agreements show consistent $200 monthly payments from HOA members for 15 years. But here's what's fascinating. The HOA's own financial records show they've been collecting $150 per month from each member for marina maintenance fees. Wait, they've been charging members $50 extra and pocketing the difference for 15 years. That's approximately $36,000 in fraudulent fees collected from their own neighbors. The scope of Belinda's operation was staggering. She wasn't just stealing properties. She was systematically defrauding her own community. That evening, I made a decision that would change everything. Instead of just fighting defensively, I went on the offensive. I spent 3 hours crafting a detailed letter to every HOA household, laying out the financial fraud, the conflict of interest with Dale's Bank, and the pattern of harassment campaigns. But the real kicker was the last paragraph, effective immediately. All marina operations will cease until the HOA settles their $144. Zero debt for unauthorized use of my lake bottom. All boats must be removed within 30 days or they'll be considered abandoned property subject to disposal. The letter went out certified mail to all 47 addresses. By Thursday morning, my phone was ringing off the hook. Not with angry calls, with desperate ones. Half the neighborhood kept their boats at my marina. Without those slips, they'd have nowhere to dock on the entire lake. But the best call came from Patricia Wong. Marcus. I did some more digging. That 1999 county agreement your uncle mentioned, I found it. The HOA's lake access easement requires annual payments of $12,000 to the property owner. Guess how many payments they've made? I was grinning before she finished. 0. They owe you $312. 0 in back easement fees. Without that easement, the entire HOA loses lake access. 31 of their 47 homes will lose 40% of their property value overnight. Suddenly, I wasn't the one fighting for survival. Belinda was. Belinda's desperation hit like a Category 5 hurricane. Within hours of my certified letters landing in mailboxes, she was calling city council members, county commissioners, and anyone else who'd listen. Her story. I was an environmental terrorist threatening the lake ecosystem with illegal construction. The first attack came Tuesday morning. I'm installing new dock cleats when this official-looking truck pulls up with environmental protection services painted on the side. Out steps this guy in a clipboard and an attitude. Mr. Trenton. Jim Bailey, contracted by the city to investigate septic system violations. Got reports of untreated waste entering the lake. My septic system was perfectly functional. Uncle Silas had it pumped and inspected 6 months before he died. But I walked Bailey through everything anyway, watching him take photos and soil samples. Like he was investigating a crime scene. System looks fine to me. Admitted quietly after Belinda's car disappeared around the corner. But between you and me, I got 3 separate calls this week demanding this inspection. Same lady each time. The harassment was becoming systematic. Wednesday brought a new twist. I'm checking mail when my neighbor Jerry Kowalski jogs over looking, nervous as a cat in a dog park. Marcus, you need to know what happened at last night's emergency board meeting. Belinda hired this private investigator, some guy from Detroit, to dig up dirt on your background. The taste of morning coffee turned bitter in my mouth. What kind of dirt? Everything. Your divorce, your finances, your work history. She's looking for anything to paint you as unfit to own lakefront property. Jerry glanced around, like he expected surveillance. But here's the thing. Half the board is getting sick of her to members already resigned, because they're worried about personal liability for these harassment campaigns. That afternoon, my phone rang with the call I'd been dreading. Mr. Trenton, this is Amanda Bennett, from Channel 8 News. We received an anonymous tip about environmental violations at your property. Would you like to comment on allegations that your construction is threatening Lake Winnebago's ecosystem? Anonymous tip my ass. But you know what? I was ready for this. Amanda, I'd love to talk. But not about environmental violations, about systematic HOA fraud and harassment campaigns targeting lakefront property owners. I've got 40 years off documentation. The silence stretched long enough for me to hear her interest spike. Can you be more specific? I gave her the 30-second version. Fraudulent marina fees, conflicts of interest with the local bank, harassment, campaigns forcing below-market property sales. By the time I finished, she was scheduling an interview for Friday morning. But Belinda wasn't done. Thursday brought her nuclear option. I'm replacing a section of dock railing when 3 vehicles roar up my driveway, like a military convoy. County inspector, sheriff's deputy, and I kid you not, a guy in a hazmat suit claiming to be from the state environmental agency. Sir, we need you to cease all construction immediately, hazmat guy announces. Pending investigation of potential groundwater contamination. The smell of fresh lumber mixed with diesel exhaust, and pure bureaucratic as I watched this theater unfold. Behind them, Belinda sat in her Escalade like a general directing troops. But here's where Uncle Silas's preparation paid off. I pulled out my phone and started recording everything. Their faces, their badge numbers, their claims. Then I called Patricia Wong on speaker. Gentlemen, you're talking to my attorney. I announced. Patricia, they're claiming groundwater contamination from dock construction. Patricia's voice cut through their official bluster like a blade. Officers, what specific contaminants are you testing for? What baseline readings do you have? And who filed the complaint that triggered this investigation? Suddenly, nobody wanted to answer questions. Turns out, Belinda had filed a complaint claiming I was dumping construction chemicals directly into the lake. Problem was, I'd been using eco-friendly wood treatments and had receipts for everything. The contamination was completely fabricated. But the real breakthrough came that evening when Tom Henderson knocked on my door holding a manila folder that smelled like vindication. Betty and I have been doing our own investigating, he said, grinning like Aked with a secret. Remember how we told you about other families Belinda drove out? Well, we contacted all of them. He spread photos across my kitchen table, property deeds, sale records, and corporate filing showing the same shell company buying every harassed property. The company name, Lakeshore Development LLC. Guess who's listed as the managing member? Tom asked. I didn't need to guess. Belinda Crankshaw and her husband Dale approved the mortgages for the shell company. Using inflated appraisals, they've been running a systematic property theft operation for 8 years. The scope was breathtaking, for families terrorized into selling property values manipulated. Bank fraud, insurance fraud. This wasn't just harassment, it was organized crime. That night, I sat on my dock listening to water lap against posts that had become the center of a war one never asked for. The moon reflected off the lake like scattered silver coins, and I realized something important. This wasn't about me property anymore. This was about justice for every family Belinda had destroyed, every neighbor she'd intimidated, every person who'd been too afraid to fight back. Tomorrow, I'd give Channel 8 News enough ammunition to blow up her entire operation. But tonight, I was going to enjoy the calm before the storm. Friday morning changed everything. I was organizing Uncle Silas's papers for the TV interview when I found a manila envelope wedged behind the filing cabinet, one I'd somehow missed in all my previous searches. The envelope was thick, sealed, and had "From my heir when the vulture" circle written in Uncle Silas's distinctive handwriting across the front. Inside was a photocopied agreement dated November 15, 1999 between Silas, Trenton, and Lakeshore County. The header read, "Easement Agreement for Lakefront Development Access." My hands started shaking as I read the details. The county had needed lake access to approve the new Lakeshore Estate subdivision. Without it, 7 families couldn't build their dream homes. So, they negotiated an easement with Uncle Silas, granting the HOA permanent lake access rights in exchange for one critical condition: an annual payment of $12,000 to the property owner, $12,000 every year for 26 years. But here's the kicker. According to the payment schedules stapled to the agreement, the HOA had made exactly 0 payments since 2017. They owed me 8 years of back fees, $96,000, plus compound interest calculated at 8% annually. The total came to $147,000. Uncle Silas had attached a handwritten note. They stopped paying when they thought I was too old and sick to fight. Joke's on them. I kept every record. The easement expires automatically if payments lapse for more than 12 months. Without lake access, 31 of their 47 homes lose 40% of their value. That's $2.3 million in collective property depreciation. Now you understand why Belinda's so desperate. I sat back in Uncle Silas's creaky chair, the magnitude hitting me like a sledgehammer. This wasn't about marina slips or dock rights. This was about the financial foundation of the entire neighborhood. Without that easement, Belinda's HOA couldn't legally access the lake at all. No swimming, no boating, no fishing, nothing. The waterfront homes would become landlocked properties with water views, but no water access. But the real revelation came in Uncle Silas's final note. Check the county recorder's office. Belinda knows about this agreement. She's known for years. That's why she's been trying to force me out. If she can steal my property, she can make the easement disappear forever. My phone buzzed with a text from Patricia Wong. Found something important about your HOA president. Can you meet this afternoon? I called her immediately. Patricia, I just found the 1999 easement agreement. The HOA owes me $147,000 in back payments. Silence then. Jesus Christ, Marcus, that explains everything. What do you mean? I spent yesterday digging through property records. Belinda Crankshaw didn't just buy those other lakefront properties through shell companies. She bought them specifically to eliminate potential easement claims. Every property she's stolen had similar county access agreements. The pattern was becoming crystal clear. Belinda wasn't just a petty HOA tyrant. She was running a sophisticated real estate fraud operation, systematically eliminating property owners who could threaten the neighborhood's lake access. There's more. Patricia continued. I found the original county planning documents from 1999. The entire Lakeshore Estates' development was contingent on that easement agreement. Without it, the county never would have approved 47 homes on a landlocked subdivision. So, if I revoke the easement, 31 homes lose their primary selling point overnight. Property values crash, mortgages go underwater, and Dale's bank faces massive losses on their loan portfolio. No wonder they were desperate. This wasn't just about my little dock. This was about millions of dollars in property values and a bank portfolio that could collapse if the truth came out. I looked out at the lake where Belinda's neighbors kept their boats, blissfully unaware that their HOA president had been lying to them for years about the most basic legal foundation of their community. Uncle Silas had left me more than property. He'd left me a nuclear weapon, and Belinda had just forced me to use it. The war room smelled like fresh coffee and righteous fury. My kitchen table had become mission control, covered with legal documents, property surveys, and a laptop streaming the Channel 8 interview I'd given that morning. The story was already going viral. HOA president's multi-million-dollar property theft scheme exposed. But I wasn't celebrating yet. Cornered animals are dangerous, and Belinda Crankshaw was about to get very, very dangerous. Patricia Wong arrived first carrying a briefcase that looked expensive enough to buy a small car. "Marcus, we need to talk strategy. That easement agreement is your nuclear option, but using it wrong could backfire spectacularly." Next came Tom and Betty Henderson, followed by Jerry Kowalski and 3 other neighbors I barely knew. Word was spreading fast through the community, and the reasonable people were picking sides. "Belinda's in full panic mode," Jerry reported, setting down a box of donuts that smelled like victory. "Called another emergency board meeting for tonight. Word is she's going to propose a special assessment of $3,000 per household to fight you in court. $3,000 per family on top of the legal fees they'd already burned through." Belinda was literally bankrupting her own neighbors to cover up her crimes. Patricia spread papers across the table. "Like a general planning a campaign. Here's what we're dealing with. Belinda has 3 possible escape routes, and we need to block all of them." She pointed to the first document. Route 1 claimed the easement agreement is invalid due to some technicality. She's probably hiring experts right now to challenge the county's authority to grant lake access easements in 1999. "Can she do that?" I asked. "It's but takes time and money to disprove. Meanwhile, she keeps collecting fraudulent marina fees and pressuring more families to sell." Betty leaned forward, her eyes sharp with anger. "What's Route 2? Declare eminent domain. Convince the county that your property is essential for community welfare. Force a sale at below market prices. It's a long shot, but Dale's banking connections might give them political leverage." The third option made my blood run cold. "Route 3 is the nastiest," Patricia continued. "Destroy your credibility through character assassination. False police reports, planted evidence. Anything to make you look like an unstable troublemaker who can't be trusted with lakefront property." Tom nodded grimly. "She tried that with us, suddenly. We were problem neighbors who didn't maintain our property properly. Amazing how many violations you can find when you're looking for them." But Patricia's next words changed the entire dynamic. "However, I spent yesterday researching similar cases, and I found something Belinda doesn't know about. There's a federal law, the Real Estate Settlement Procedures Act, that makes it a felony to use systematic harassment campaigns to manipulate property values. We're not just talking civil court anymore. This could be federal prison time." The room went quiet except for the gentle hum of my refrigerator and the distant sound of boats on the lake. "How do we prove systematic harassment?" I asked. Jerry raised his hand like a kid in school. "I've been documenting everything since the Hendersons got forced out. Photos, violation notices, meeting minutes where Belinda talked about maintaining community standards, 3 years of evidence." Betty opened her purse and pulled out a manila folder. "We contacted the other families she drove out. The Martinez couple, the Patels, the Kowalskis, who sold in 2019. They all kept records, too." The scope of our counterattack was becoming clear. Patricia outlined the strategy. Phase 1. We hit her with the easement payment demand publicly. Full $147,000 certified mail to every HOA member so they understand exactly what their president has been hiding from them. Phase 2, Tom added. We organized the reasonable neighbors. Jerry's already got 15 families willing to sign a petition, demanding Belinda's resignation and a full financial audit. Phase 3 is the media blitz. Patricia continued. That Channel 8 story was just the beginning. I've got contacts at the Detroit Free Press and a producer at 60 Minutes, who specializes in real estate fraud cases, but the real masterstroke came from an unexpected source. Rebecca Marsh, the local elementary school teacher who lived 3 houses down, had been quietly listening from the corner. What if we turn her own tactics against her? She suggested. Belinda's been using HOA meetings to intimidate people for years. What if we pack the next meeting with supporters and demand answers about missing easement payments? The beauty of it was obvious. Instead of fighting her in court, where she had resources, we'd confront her in the community center where every lie would be witnessed by the neighbors she'd been defrauding. The annual HOA meeting is scheduled for next Saturday, Jerry said, checking his phone. All 47 households get a vote on leadership and budget matters. Patricia grinned like a shark smelling blood. Perfect. By then, we'll have filed federal complaints, delivered payment demands, and given every neighbor a chance to understand exactly how much money Belinda's schemes have cost them. I looked around the table at these people who'd become my allies in a fight I never wanted. Tomorrow, we'd start dismantling Belinda's empire, one document at a time. But tonight, We were going to enjoy planning her downfall. Belinda's response was swift, vicious, and completely illegal. Sunday night. I'm reviewing legal documents when I hear the rumble of heavy machinery outside. Through my window, I see a construction truck dumping a pile of concrete debris and rusted rebar right at the edge of my shoreline, close enough to make it look like mine, far enough to technically be on county right-of-way. By Monday morning, spray paint reading community property covered 3 sections of my dock in dripping red letters. The smell of fresh paint mixed with lake water and my growing rage, as I documented everything with my phone camera. But Belinda's masterstroke came Tuesday afternoon. I'm pressure washing the vandalism when Sheriff Deputy Martinez pulls into my driveway, looking uncomfortable as hell. Behind him, Belinda's Escalade sits like a vulture waiting for roadkill. Mr. Trenton, I hate to do this, but I've got 3 separate reports filed yesterday claiming you threatened HOA board members with physical violence. My pressure washer shut off with a mechanical wheeze. 3 reports. Mrs. Crankshaw, board member Dale Hutchkins, and he checked his notepad. Semi-Nenim Patricia Kowalski claims he showed up at her house Saturday night, quote, making terroristic threats about what happens to people who cross you. The absurdity was breathtaking. Deputy, I was at my attorney's office Saturday night until 9 p.m., then home watching Netflix. I've got receipts and streaming history to prove it. Martinez nodded. Figured as much, but I still got to file the report. Just maybe install some security cameras, for your own protection. The message was clear. Belinda was escalating to fabricated criminal charges. That evening, Patricia Wong called with news that made my blood pressure spike. Marcus, I got a tip from someone at the county inspector's office. Belinda tried to bribe Jim Bailey. Offered him $2,000 cash to find environmental violations on your property. Please tell me he recorded it better. He reported it to his supervisor and filed a formal complaint. But here's the scary part. She also approached the septic inspector, the electrical inspector, and Simeone from the fire marshal's office. She's trying to buy violations. The systematic corruption was staggering, but it gave us ammunition. Wednesday brought a new horror. Tom Henderson called at 6 a.m., his voice shaking with rage. Marcus, they got into our mailbox last night, stole 3 weeks of mail, including our social security checks and Betty's medical forms. Found our stuff scattered in the ditch near Belinda's house. Mail theft, federal crime. She was getting desperate and auto-risked serious prison time. But the real attack came Thursday morning when my phone rang with the call I've been dreading. Mr. Trenton, this is Sandra Willis from the Michigan Department of Natural Resources. We received reports that your construction activities have disturbed protected wildlife nesting areas. We need to conduct an immediate site inspection. I grabbed my documentation folder and met her at the dock. Sandra was professional, thorough, and clearly annoyed at having her time wasted. After 2 hours of inspection, soil samples, and photo documentation, she delivered her verdict. Mr. Trenton, your improvements are actually beneficial to lake ecology. Whoever filed this complaint either doesn't understand environmental science or is deliberately wasting state resources. As she packed up her equipment, Sandra leaned closer and lowered her voice. Off the record. I've gotten 4 complaints about your property in 2 weeks. Same person each time. Increasingly hysterical claims. Someone's trying very hard to create problems where none exist. That afternoon, Jerry Kowalski jogged over with intelligence that changed everything. Emergency HOA board meeting last night, he reported, breathing hard. Belinda proposed hiring private security to patrol community boundaries and document violations. Translation, she wants to pay guys to spy on you 24/7. The paranoia was becoming pathological. But here's the good news, Jerry continued. 3 more board members resigned. They're scared about personal liability for harassmental visits. The board's down to Belinda, her husband Dale, and one other guy who owes Dale's bank about $50. Zero on his mortgage. The empire was crumbling from within. Friday brought the counterattack. I spent the morning installing a professional security system, 8 cameras covering every angle of my property, motion sensors, and cloud backup that would stream everything directly to Patricia's law office. But the real victory came when Rebecca Marsh knocked on my door holding a manila folder and grinning like she'd won the lottery. Marcus, you're not going to believe this. I teach Dale's daughter, Emma, in my 4th grade class. Yesterday, Emma asked me why her daddy was so worried about the lake man, and mentioned hearing her parents argue about money they owe. Then what happens if people find out? Kids hear everything, and they remember what adults think they forget. Emma also mentioned that her mom, that's Belinda, has been making secret phone calls about selling their house. and moving away before everything falls apart. The rats were preparing to abandon ship. That night, sitting on my dock with the new security cameras humming quietly overhead, I realized Belinda had made a fatal error. Every illegal act, every fabricated complaint, every desperate attempt to frame me was being documented by multiple sources. She thought she was destroying me. Instead, she was building the federal case that would destroy her. Belinda's final week of freedom was a masterclass in criminal desperation. Monday morning, I wake up to find my driveway blocked by an official-looking truck, with Lakeshore Property Management Services painted on the side. Two guys in polo shirts are measuring my shoreline and taking photos like they own the place. "Excuse me," I call out. "This is private property." The bigger guy barely looks up. "Court order, buddy. HOA hired us to assess community assets for potential receivership." "Court order my ass." I checked. No such filing existed, but these clowns didn't know I'd been documenting everything. By Tuesday, Belinda had escalated to document forgery. Patricia Wong called me, voice tight with controlled fury. "Marcus, she filed a marina lease renewal with the county clerk's office. Claims you signed a 99-year agreement transferring all lake access rights to the HOA for $1 annually." The audacity was breathtaking. Please tell me they didn't accept it. "Oh, they accepted it. All right. Until I had a handwriting expert examine your signature. It's a laughably bad forgery. She didn't even get the capital letters right. Document forgery. Federal felony. 5 years minimum sentence." Wednesday brought the bribery attempt. Judge Morrison's campaign fund received a mysterious $5,000 donation from concerned Lakeshore citizens. The same day, Belinda filed motions challenging the easement agreement. Problem was, the donation check was signed by Dale Crankshaw using the HOA's community fund account. Campaign finance violation, misuse of HOA funds, and attempted judicial bribery. She was collecting felonies like Pokemon cards. Thursday morning delivered the environmental terrorism hoax. I'm having coffee when Patricia calls, barely containing her laughter. "You're not going to believe this. Belinda organized a fake environmental protest outside the county office building. Hired about 15 people from a temp agency to hold signs claiming you're poisoning the lake." "Did it work?" "Oh, it worked beautifully for us." Channel 8 interviewed the protesters. Half of them admitted on camera they were paid $50 each and had no idea what they were protesting. The other half couldn't even pronounce environmental. The desperation was becoming comedy. But Friday brought news that stopped me cold. Rebecca Marsh called at dawn, her teacher's voice sharp with professional concern. "Marcus, Emma Crankshaw didn't come to school yesterday." When I called the house, Belinda claimed they'd gone to visit grandparents, but Emma's grandmother lives 2 streets over, and she hasn't seen them. The family was running. Within an hour, Tom Henderson confirmed it. Saw them loading suitcases into Dale's car at 5 a.m. Big ones. Like they're planning a long trip. They were fleeing before the federal investigation could catch up with them. That afternoon, I got the call that changed everything. FBI Special Agent Lisa Bennett, Financial Crimes Division. "Mr. Trenton, we've been monitoring the situation in your neighborhood for several weeks. Your attorney provided us with substantial documentation regarding systematic real estate fraud, and we're ready to move forward." "Move forward how?" "Arrest, search warrants, asset seizure." Mrs. Crankshaw has been running a racketeering operation that crosses state lines. "We've identified similar schemes in Ohio and Indiana. This isn't just local HOA corruption anymore." The scope was staggering. Belinda hadn't just been stealing lakefront properties. She'd been running a multi-state real estate fraud ring. "We need you to attend Saturday's HOA meeting as planned," Agent Bennett continued. "Let her think she's safe while we execute warrants. Can you handle that?" Saturday morning arrived gray and misty with the smell of rain hanging heavy over the lake. The community center parking lot was packed. 47 households plus media supporters and what looked like half the county sheriff's department in unmarked cars. Inside, Belinda sat at the head table wearing a navy blazer-like armor. Her fake smile stretched so tight it looked painful. Dale hunched beside her, constantly checking his phone like he expected bad news. The meeting started normally. Budget reports, landscaping proposals, the usual HOA bureaucracy. But I could feel the tension building like pressure in a boiler. Then Rebecca Marsh stood up. "I'd like to ask about the $147,000 in unpaid easement fees that the HOA owes Mr. Trenton for lake access rights." The room went dead silent. Belinda's smile flickered like a dying light bulb. "I'm not sure what you're referring to," she said carefully. Tom Henderson stood next. "I'm referring to the 1999 Count Ya agreement that requires annual payments of $12. 0 for community lake access. The agreement we haven't paid since 2017. More neighbors rose. Jerry Kowalski, Betty Henderson, 15 families who discovered their HOA president had been lying about the basic legal foundation of their community. Belinda's facade finally cracked. This is a coordinated attack by outside agitators trying to destroy our property values. That's when Agent Bennett walked through the back door, badge gleaming under theft fluorescent lights. Mrs. Belinda Crankshaw, you're under arrest for racketeering, mail fraud, wire fraud, document forgery, and conspiracy to commit real estate fraud. The handcuffs clicked with the most beautiful sound I'd ever heard. Game over, Queen Belinda. The community center erupted like a powder keg. Belinda's face went white as Agent Bennett approached the head table, her FBI badge catching the harsh fluorescent light. Behind her, 3 more agents filed through the entrance while sheriffs Tapushi spas on themselves at every exit. This is ridiculous, Belinda shrieked, standing so fast her chair toppled backward. I demand to speak to my attorney. You'll have that opportunity, Agent Bennett replied calmly, pulling out handcuffs that gleamed like silver justice. Belinda Crankshaw, you're under arrest for racketeering, mail fraud, wire fraud, document forgery, bribery of public officials, and conspiracy to commit real estate fraud. The room buzzed with shocked whispers, and the electronic wore-off phone cameras capturing every moment. Dale tried to slip toward the side exit, but Deputy Martinez was already there waiting. Dale Crankshaw, you're also under arrest for bank fraud, conspiracy, and violation of the Real Estate Settlement Procedures Act. Local Channel 8 was broadcasting live, their camera operators scrambling to get the perfect shot of handcuffs clicking around Belinda's wrists. The sound echoed through the silent room like a judge's gavel. This is a setup, Belinda screamed as Agent Bennett read her rights. He's the criminal. He threatened us. He's trying to steal our lake. But I was ready for this moment. Standing. Slowly, I pulled out the manila folder that had been sitting on my lap throughout the meeting. Actually, Belinda, let's talk about who's been stealing what. I walked to the front of the room, my voice carrying clearly over the stunned silence. Ladies and gentlemen, your HOA president has been lying to you for 8 years about the most basic legal requirement for your lake access. I held up the 1999 easement agreement. This document signed by the county, and my uncle requires annual payments of $12.00 for community lake access rights. Without these payments, 31 of your homes lose their water access entirely. The crowd stirred uneasily. Jerry Kowalski raised his hand. How much do we owe? Including compound interest, $147,000. But that's not the worst part. I pulled out the property records Tom Henderson had compiled. Your president has been systematically targeting lakefront property owners, using harassment campaigns to force below-market sales. For families driven out, properties purchased through shell companies for 60% of market value. Murmurs turned to angry voices as neighbors began connecting the dots. But I wasn't finished. She's also been defrauding you directly. The HOA has been charging each of you $250 monthly for marina maintenance fees while only paying my uncle $100. That's $50 per household per month for 15 years. Approximately $36,000 stolen from your own community funds. The room exploded. Voices overlapped in a chorus of outrage. She stole from us. My marina fees paid for her schemes. How much of our money is missing? Belinda struggled against the handcuffs, her face twisted with rage and desperation. You don't understand. He's an outsider. He doesn't belong here. We were protecting the community. Protecting it from what? Rebecca Marsh stood up, her teacher's voice cutting through the chaos. From having a neighbor who actually owns his property legally. Tom Henderson rose next, his weathered face hard with anger. You drove us out of our home with lies and harassment. $31,000 in legal fees because you wanted our lakefront property. More voices joined the chorus. Betty Henderson describing 17 violation notices in 6 months. Jerry Kowalski explaining the constant intimidation tactics, 3 neighbors admitting they considered selling just to escape the harassment. Agent Bennett stepped forward holding up evidence bags containing documents. Mrs. Crankshaw attempted to bribe county inspectors, forged property agreements, organized mail theft, and filed false police reports. We have recordings, photographs, and witness testimony documenting systematic criminal activity spanning multiple states. The media feeding frenzy was in full swing. Cameras flashed, reporters shouted questions, and social media was exploding with hashtags like HOA scandal and hashtag Laker exposed. But the most satisfying moment came when I addressed the community directly. Despite everything your president has put me through, I'm prepared to offer a reasonable settlement. I'll forgive the $147,000 0 in back easement payments in exchange for a $50,000 payment plan over 5 years to fund marina improvements and lake restoration. The relief in the room was palpable. Furthermore, I'll maintain community lake access at fair user fees, establish a resident-controlled marina management committee, and ensure transparent operations going forward. Spontaneous applause broke out as neighbors realized their nightmare was ending. As FBI agents escorted Belinda and Dale toward the exit, she turned back one final time, her voice cracking with defeat. "This isn't over. My lawyers will destroy you." But Agent Bennett's response was the perfect mic drop moment. "Ma'am, you're facing 37 federal charges. Your lawyers are getting to be very busy." The community center doors slammed shut behind them. With the finality of a prison cell, justice served, lakefront style. That taste of victory was sweeter than I'd ever imagined. 6 months later, the smell of barbecue smoke and fresh pine needles drifted across Lake Winnebago as 300 people celebrated the first annual Lake Freedom Festival. Belinda Crankshaw was serving 18 months in federal prison after pleading guilty to 14 counts of fraud and racketeering. Dale lost his banking license and received 2 years for his role in the conspiracy. The FBI had seized $340,000 in fraudulent proceeds, plus their house, cars, and boat, all sold at auction to compensate victims. But revenge was never the point, justice was. The transformation was breathtaking. The new HOA board, elected unanimously after Belinda's arrest, had slashed annual dues by 45% through transparent budgeting. Property values soared 18% once buyers learned about guaranteed lake access and honest management. The fraudulent marina maintenance fees were history, replaced by actual maintenance that you could see and touch. "Marcus, you need to see this." Rebecca Marsh jogged over, her teacher's smile bright as summer sunshine. "We'd been dating for months. Now, turns out fighting corruption together builds one hell of a foundation." She handed me a thick envelope that felt important. Inside was notification that our environmental restoration project had won a $25,000 state grant for invasive species removal and native plant restoration. The Silas Trenton Lake Conservation Initiative would transform 100 acres of damaged shoreline into pristine habitat for fish, birds, and the next generation of kids who grow up swimming in clean water. Tom and Betty Henderson approached carrying plates of pulled pork that smelled like community and second chances. They had become the unofficial neighborhood grandparents, hosting weekly coffee sessions where people actually talked instead of filing violation complaints. 42 kids signed up for the sailing program, Betty announced proudly. Emma Crankshaw was first on the list. Emma had stayed with her grandmother after her parents' arrest. The kid was thriving without constant toxic stress, becoming one of Rebecca's star students. Sometimes justice looks like a 10-year-old learning to sail on water her parents tried to steal. The Marina Cooperative was generating $3,200 monthly in slip fees, money that funded playground equipment, road repairs, and a new beach area accessible to disabled residents. Uncle Silas would have loved seeing his old boat slip serving the entire community instead of lining corrupt pockets. Jerry Kowalski bounded over with news that made everything perfect. Patricia Wong just called. That documentary about our story won a regional Emmy, and she's launching a national nonprofit legal clinic for HOA abuse victims. They're calling it the Lake Winnebago model for community recovery. The media attention had been intense but ultimately healing. My phone rang weekly with calls from other property owners facing similar harassment. Patricia's legal clinic had already helped 17 families fight back against corrupt HOA letters in 6 states. The ripple effects kept spreading. The Michigan legislature passed the Property Rights Protection Act, requiring full disclosure of easement agreements and establishing criminal penalties for systematic harassment campaigns. Ohio, Wisconsin, and Indiana were drafting similar laws. Uncle Silas's quiet resistance had become a national movement. But the moment that mattered most came when the original Kowalski family returned for the festival. They bought a cabin across the lake, closed now to rejoin the community they'd been terrorized into abandoning. "You didn't just save your property," Mr. Kowalski told me, voice thick with emotion. "You saved the idea that regular people can fight back and win." As twilight painted the lake in gold and crimson, I stood on the dock where this war began. The wood felt smooth under my feet, worn by countless neighbors who no longer feared enjoying their own community. Children's laughter echoed across water that sparkled with reflected stars. An infinity possibility. The Silas Trenton Environmental Scholarship would award $5.00 annually to local students studying conservation or environmental law. The first recipient was Emma Crankshaw, proof that even the children of bullies deserve chances to build something better. Uncle Silas's journals taught me That protecting good people sometimes means stopping bad ones, but the real lesson was simpler. Communities heal when neighbors choose courage over fear, truth over convenience, and justice over the easy path. The festival wound down as stars emerged over Lake Winnebago, reflecting like scattered diamonds on water that finally belonged to everyone who lived beside it. Stories like this one prove that ordinary people can defeat corrupt systems when they stand together. If you've got your own HOA nightmare to share, drop it in the comments and tell me where you're watching from. Your story might be featured next. And if you love seeing justice served lakefront style, subscribe to HOA Stories and hit that notification bell for more tales of neighbors fighting back and winning against petty tyrants, because sometimes the good guys really do win. We appreciate you spending your time with us on HOA Stories, where HOA cars finally get checked. If you enjoyed today's drama, hit like, comment on your favorite part below, and don't forget to subscribe so you'll be the first to catch our next HOA showdown.